Well, 2 Timothy chapter 3, those first 5 verses, it's the last days culture. And let me just say up front, God was very, very wise in telling us in great detail what the culture will be like for the last days Christians. Because if he didn't, we would be looking around going, is this the tribulation? Did we miss the rapture? Does God know what's going on here? God, I'm totally shocked. I didn't think the world would be in such a disarray and we would still be here in the midst of such horrible world. But the Lord makes it clear that there is a stage of absolute chaos worldwide, moral breakdown, societal breakdown, doctrines of demons spreading throughout the earth, for everybody to be so desperate, whether you're living in Ethiopia or China or Europe or wherever you're at, you would be willing to look at this one leader and say, we want you to lead us as well. Don't just lead your country, lead our country. And I honestly think the world's going to get broken down into 10 regions, 10 kingdoms. There's an interesting thing that's called Cohen and Piven. Just a little side note. You can look it up on YouTube. Tucker Carlson, he talked about it. But this was sort of the Bible for the 60s and 70s, the Obamas. He mentioned it many times. But it's basically a layout for every country in the world to destroy itself. And so every continent can come together as one. And so the vision is Central, South, North America, the one continent would be governed by one government. This is why, and if you read right there, it says open borders, everybody is crashed, you mix it up, nobody has any North America identity or Mexico identity or Central America or South America identity, that it's just all rearranged until there is no identity. And now we, the elite, will help you to come up with a new identity. And the bottom line is, just do what we say and you'll be okay. We don't need you to do anything at all, but just comply. And this has been the world order that we're fighting against. Welcome to the world order. What's that? What's they say on the airplane you get on? Welcome to the new world order or something. Yeah, we're here. And this is what they're doing throughout Europe and everywhere that's not communist. Basically, the communists are like, you're not going to do that here. But it's okay, because they're pretty much, for a different reason, taking over their continents as well. So the Bible talks a lot about these things in detail, and it's a bit complicated. If you look in Daniel and Revelation, 85% of that book is quotes from the rest of the Bible. So it's sort of a final exam, if you would. Did you study the whole Bible? Well, now you'll understand the book of Revelation. If you didn't, it's going to sound pretty wild and crazy to you. But the point is we as Christians, our eyes are wide open. We understand that our part in this is not to try to control this demonic freight train that's coming at us. But as we're going to get to chapter 4, we're going to see we just do our part in sharing the word and discipling. One by one person. We're not going to be some giant Christian kingdom fighting it out with the world kingdom. No, we are just one-on-one, sharing the Lord and discipling in whatever season we're at. So, to every generation, I think a number of these end times looking prophecies is in the culture. Because Satan is the same. He's trying to do it right now, whether it was back in the Roman times or, whether it was in the 1100 AD. He's always trying to push his agenda as soon as he can. But God is like, no, you're going to do it on my time. So a number of the things that are going to get worse and worse. See, that's the thing. You go, well, wars and rumors of war, we always had that. But understand, these things are going to get worse and worse. They're going to be at a level that we will say nothing like this in human history has happened. Okay? And that's the point. So every generation's had earthquakes or wars, but it will be at a whole nother level until the entire world is crushing in and they are ready to look to this world leader who said, I'll bring you peace. He's lying, but it sure will feel like it, at least for a short time, until he commands them all to worship him as God. So we often, in reading these type of things, it's upsetting. How many of you guys just don't watch the news anymore? Because it's just upsetting. I try to watch a little bit of political news to know if I, need to get my shotgun ready or whatever. But outside of that, I just don't need to listen to who died in a car wreck and who committed suicide and how many school shootings there are. And it's just like, I just can't take it anymore. Well, it's okay. I'm glad you saved it up, because today I'm going to give you that feeling of watching the news you didn't want to watch. So we are talking about the atmosphere, the culture of the last days. And we're going to look at verse 5. And what we're going to discover in these 5 verses is 18 different descriptions. 18 of them of what this is going to look like. And so Paul very specifically, uniquely at times, words nowhere else used, gives us this description. But as he always does in each of the books, he says, know this. When the Bible says know this, you know what it means, right? He wants us to know this. It's something that's a part of the Christian culture, whether it's the rapture comes in our time or not. We're teaching it like it could happen in our time. I believe the tension of the Lord's return is a necessary tension. And I think if we don't add to the Bible or take away from the Bible, the tension will keep us perfectly in tune. Like a guitar. If it's just sluggish, it does nothing, right? But if you tune it too tight, it's sharp and it sounds equally as bad. But all 6 strings are very specifically tuned to a very certain tension. And then you have a beautiful sound. So some people teach this tension in a way that's too sharp. Other people don't teach it at all because nobody wants to hear it because it's upsetting. And so they're making no music whatsoever. But we want to do it just the right amount. And this is why I think the Bible has it in the Bible in the right amount. But as we talked about in 1 Thessalonians, what was shocking to us is that Paul had only been there 3 Sabbaths. So at the most 4 weeks, at the most about 30 days, he was in Thessalonica. But when he writes that letter a few months later, he says to them, I hear that guys are coming in and quoting me that I've changed my doctrines on end times, and they're getting letters and people are saying they're messengers from me. And he goes, no. And he goes, I'm going to tell you what I said. And this is what he said to Thessalonians. You know perfectly well. After 3 weeks of teaching, Paul did a lot of end times teaching to those 3-week-old Christians. And then, of course, we saw in 1 Timothy 4, where he says, now the Spirit expressly says in the last days. So the Spirit is not hemming and hawing and trying to say, well, it's sort of like this, but not forget about it. No, the Spirit is expressly saying, That in the last days, and whether you're in the last days or not, you need to know this, or you can teach it to the generation that's coming after you, because they may be that last generation Christian. And by you teaching this, it tunes you up. It gets you on both ends, looking at your life in the Lord, at church, and the Bible, but it also is looking at the world around us and the other end of the string of the guitar, tightening up just right, so we have the right Christian perspective on how we look at the world. And what does he say to the Philippian church who was upset about the politics of their day? Your number one citizenship is in heaven. And guess what? God has going to make this, not this America great again, he's going to make the whole world great again in the 1,000-year millennial reign. So Jesus is on the throne, whoever's the president, okay? Not that I'm not thrilled right now. I don't think I could take another week listening to Kamala's voice. Sorry for you Democrats. I'll try to lay off the politics. But I think they've already left, haven't they? But I'm thankful. But at the same time, I am not hoping for much. I had a lot of hope in both Bush administrations, very disappointed. You know, I was a little on the young side with Reagan, but I was old enough to be thankful. But I've also learned my number one citizenship is in heaven. Earth stuff, yeah, we want to keep a light touch on that. We want to do it. We want to deal with it. But it's not like, oh, thank you, God, you're delivering me through a guy who is as excited about having homosexuals in his White House as he is God in the White House. So I'm not deluded by these things. I'm thankful, but at the same time, God is on the throne. My citizenship is heaven. Whatever I lose in this 100 years, if I live to be 100 years old now, it's irrelevant because I'm going to be on this earth for 1,000 years. And we will be in charge. We'll be in our new bodies, kings and priests unto God. And, you say, well, I had to suffer so much being poor when I was here on earth before. Well, now you got a brand new body. You don't need money. Go surfing for 100 years, and you got 900 years left. Go climb the Alps for 100 years. You got 800 years left. Yeah, if you shoot for heaven, if you look for your citizenship in heaven, you get the earth thrown in with it. Remember C.S. Lewis said that? If you shoot for earth, you lose earth and heaven. But if you shoot for heaven, you'll get heaven and the earth is going to get thrown in with it. So in these last days, the last days started on the day of Pentecost. The very first sermon ever preached by Peter in Acts 2, he lays that out. He says, guys, this is a last day sign. They were speaking in tongues. The Holy Spirit had come upon them, the cloven tongues of fire, and they all thought they were drunk. And Peter gets up and says, we're not drunk. This is a sign from the prophet Joel that we are now in the last days. And he said, in these last days, it's no longer about being Jewish. It's no longer about being a man or woman. God is not distinguishing between the rich and the poor and men and women and young and the old. Anybody, and he ends the sermon by saying this, anybody who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. That's it. That is the wonderful gospel message we have. But he does say the end of the last days, he describes the end of the 7-year tribulation period, where the moon turns to blood and all of these things. So we are in the last days, but there's going to be some last days of the last days before the rapture. So when we talk about the last days, and this is the way Jesus looked at it as well as Paul, he's really talking about the rapture in the 7-year tribulation period. Even though it started with the day of Pentecost, these are the things that he's referring to. So in those days before the rapture is what we should say, he tells us there in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, know this in the last days, then he tells us, perilous times will come. This word perilous is the word savage. It's the animal like a bear just crushing and eating up its prey. It's like a boat in the middle of a storm being tossed and just about ready to be crushed by the giant waves. This word in the Greek is only used one other time in the Bible. And it's in Matthew chapter 8, verse 28. You know the story. It says, when he had come to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, the country of the Gadarenes, there met him 2 demon-possessed men coming out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce. There's the word. So that no one could pass by that way. And he explains, they chained him up, they just break the chains. They were naked in these tombs running around, and the main highway nobody could get by it. Because these 2 demon-possessed men, we find out later, had a legion, 6,000 demons within them. So take that little graveyard area with those 2 demon-possessed men in it, naked and cutting themselves and chained up, but the chains are broken and nobody can get by and nobody can control the demonic area. Now expand that area to the planet Earth. This is what the Bible is explaining to us. Remember in 1 Timothy chapter 4, he says the same thing. In verse 1 and 2 of 1 Timothy 4, the Spirit expressly says in the latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to what? Deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron. Just obviously 2 standards or 3 standards of what they say and what they do. It doesn't matter. It's just this hypocritical, their conscience are seared with a hot iron. They're not moved by anything. And people are attracted to that charisma. And I've been in situations where very famous people, I won't give any names, and I was around them, and I experienced charisma like I've never experienced before. And I realized there are people born on this earth with such charisma that it is overpowering to other human beings. And it's scary. It really is scary. This is what we're going to have. These very elite teachers all over the world, all being controlled by the devil. It's an exceedingly fierce, demonic world that we, the people in the last days, I think we're in it now, will be experiencing. Jesus describes this generation as the days of Noah and the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. The days of Noah, the heart of man was evil continually, and violence filled the earth. And the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, it was a homosexual, permeated, vicious society, because the homosexual permeated society led to such a type of society that was also brutal. And we're going to see that in Romans 1 in a little bit. But what's the warning about Sodom and Gomorrah? Jesus says, remember Lot's wife. She probably, like Lot, was a righteous person. You know, Peter says, Lot was a righteous man whose righteous soul was vexed every day. We don't get that from reading the book of Genesis. But God knows, and that was his commentary. And Lot was getting his wife out as well. But she was so carnal, she was so entrenched, and she knew that she needed to have her heart solely in God. But she had a divided spirit. And she looked back and she goes, I finally had my house decorated just the way I wanted it, you know. There were so many superior decorators there in Sodom and Gomorrah. And now it's all going to be destroyed with fire. Watch and pray, Jesus says, that we're counted worthy to escape all these things. So these last days, perilous times, notice here, this is specific, will come. Back in chapter 3, verse 1. They will come. This is not the word for come that we normally see. The actual word here is threatened, or danger is coming. Those perilous times, that danger will come. It's in the present and future tense. And it is always in the world, but it's going to grow worse and worse, as we'll hear next week in 2 Timothy 3. Jesus tells us of those days that will come. He says in Matthew 24, the rapture is going to happen in the middle of it. In Matthew 24:36, but of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. In Matthew 24:50, the master of the servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and an hour that he's not aware of him or expecting him. So in other words, it's going to happen, and then the next generation is going to grow up in that generation, and hopefully they don't become like Lot's wife. And then the next generation is going to be even worse, but they're not going to know it because it's sort of like the frog going from the warm water to boiling in the hot water. I had a scientist guy come up and go, it's not like that. You put a frog, they jump out. They don't. But anyway, just for analogy's sake, let's say the scientist is wrong. But it's going to get to the point that it's such a long period of time that you say, well, things have been like this 50 years, 80 years, 100 years. So if you're describing the time, this has been going on for a long time. So why would it come now? But this is the whole point of it, is that every Christian to some degree has to fight this kind of world. And every Christian should say, things are bad enough now that the Lord could come, and we need to be ready for his coming. Well, verse 2 now starts that list of 18 things. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, and unholy. Let's break that down. Lovers of themselves. Now, what we're going to find here is this word love, philo, used many, many times here. Philo is like a brotherly type of love. But he's going to add a Greek word to that, like we say philosophy. Well, philo is love, philosophy. Philosophy is soaphi is wisdom, lover of wisdom. Or we say a person's a philanthropist. They're a lover of giving. Or a bibliophile. Philo, a book lover. So this is how it's done. 5 times he's going to use this word here. They are lovers of self, philo, self, philo, covetousness, philo, money, philo, pleasure, and philo, in the opposite, not of God. They're lovers of self, but they're not lovers of God. They're lovers of pleasure, but not lovers of God. They're lovers of covetousness and money and earth and what they can get now upon this earth, but not of God and the eternal kingdom. The Christian worldview is the opposite of this. Remember in Philippians 2, verse 3 and 4? Let nothing be done. Philippians 2, verse 3 and 4. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. So instead of being prideful and arrogant and self-seeking and trying to get money and covetousness, and that our Christians are doing the opposite. We're living for, this earth is just a bus stop. A smelly old stinky bus stop, and there's not enough seats, and my legs are tired, and I want to sit down, and we're just waiting for the bus. And let me tell you, our life is a vapor. Me and Cheryl had a young boy that I've known from the day he was born, he just turned 17 yesterday. He came over to our house, and he's looking at me going, life is going by so fast. He's 17. And I'm like, yeah, you have no idea about that. How true of a statement that is. It's just a vapor. We're at a bus stop. Well, I got to make sure I have the best tiles at my bus stop. I want my faucets covered in gold at this bus stop. I want the best clothes for my bus stop. It's just a bus stop. We're here for a second, and then eternity begins. So we are thinking about God and the kingdom to come. And far as this earth, here's my seat. Take it. I have no rights at this bus stop. I'm just passing through. I'm a pilgrim. I'm a stranger passing through. This is not the earth that I'm going to be living at for 1,000 years. This is a sinking, demonic earth that I'm not at home at all here. I don't need to get at home. I don't need newer or brighter or bigger or shinier or nicer or the ones the Joneses have. I'm just passing through. My whole point now is to put others first, to see everybody's interest is more important than my own interest, and for my whole life to be a light and a point to Jesus and a hope in eternity. So many people killing themselves. So many people that love money so much and fame. You know, I think of Robin Williams, and one of many very famous, very wealthy people that committed suicide. Why? Because they didn't keep running for the carrot until the day they died and never got the carrot. They got the carrot. And guess what? It was empty. Really, really, really interesting book I finished this week by C.S. Lewis called The Great Divorce. The title is it's fighting against an atheist who wrote a book who wanted to marry. It's called The Great Marriage of Heaven and Hell Together, where basically it's sort of a John Lennon theory, where there's no heaven, there's no hell, live in a world where we all end up in the same place. And his whole point was this. C.S. Lewis, who was a new Christian himself, in 1945, he's like, if there is no hell, we should all be constantly bitter and at rage and anger at the evil in the world around us, that it'll never fully be punished. And let me tell you, if you've talked to parents whose child has been murdered by a murderer, you know the only comfort you can give them is that if they don't turn their life to Christ, they will be eternally punished for what they did to your child. In the same way, there is not enough on this earth that meets our longing. And the whole point of this book is, if you're thirsty, we have water to quench that thirst, right? We're hungry, we have food to quench the hunger. But every single human being longs for things that have never been on this earth and never can be experienced on this earth. But yet we long for it. We long for a happiness that never can be experienced. We long for a joy that can never be experienced. We long for an intimacy of relationship that never can be experienced. We long for a mansion. People on earth, they get their mansion and then they hate it. Honey, can I have a glass of water? Okay, I got to go 3 flights of stairs down, and through the 3 living rooms. Here's your glass of water. Oh, I forgot to ask for ice. And you got 10 housekeepers and 4 gardeners and 3 pool guys always at your house. It's never really your house. You're just sort of using a room in the house while everybody fixes the house and cleans it and takes care of it so it doesn't fall apart. So people get their big house and they're like, this owns me. This house owns me. I don't own this house. In the same way, you get the big hunk of metal that's worth $500,000 to drive you around. You know what you find out after a week of being in that hunk of metal, even though it's a Rolls Royce or whatever? It just gets you from A to Z. It doesn't do anything other than that. But that's all of us. We long for a mansion, but that mansion is in glory. We long for a peace that only can be found out of these wicked bodies, out of this wicked earth, in the presence of God. And so to love this world and to love ourselves in this sinful body and thinking that we can find fulfillment in self on this earth. And then he does the same thing, lovers of money, or literally lovers of silver. Again, we studied in 1 Timothy 6, verse 10, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith, and their greediness have pierced themselves through with many sorrows. A lot of very wealthy people have been pierced through with many, many sorrows. And often the entire family hates each other over money issues. They wouldn't, the number one reason they don't get together at Thanksgiving or want to talk to each other on the phone, it's over money. And it's usually millions, you know. I deserve 6 million instead of 4 million, or I deserve 60 million rather than 80 million, or vice versa. And it's just like, this is ridiculous. You have more money than you could spend in 3 lifetimes, and yet you're mad about it. In Luke 16:13, it says, Jesus says clearly, no servant, referring to the servant of God, can serve 2 masters, for he'll either hate the one and love the other, he'll be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Mammon's the god of money. So notice the first 2 sort of go hand in hand, because typically people who love themselves find they need a lot of money to love themselves. And they're seeking after money so they can love themselves some more, but they need a lot of money to love themselves. Then the third thing is boasters. This literally is the word empty pretender. Brags about his own accomplishments and wants everybody to admire him for things that he didn't do. Again, the Christian mindset is the opposite of that, isn't it? We want to be invisible, that Christ, let me decrease, that Christ might increase, right? I want you to look at me, but not see me and my good works. You look at my good works, and immediately you recognize my Father who's in heaven. The next word is proud. This is, again, sort of similar, but again, it's showing oneself, this time, above others. So it's not that I just want to be admired by you, but it's important that you understand I'm above you. So that's my car over here, okay? You got the Toyota, I got the Mercedes, I'm above you. This is my zip code, that's your zip code, I'm above you. Whatever it is, you know. So, you get some poor guy from Compton with a Harvard shirt, and then he feels superior, I guess, because I've got a Harvard shirt. I didn't go to Harvard, but I feel superior wearing my Harvard shirt. And then again, the next one here is blasphemers. This is one literally who speaks evil, slanders others, abuses others. So in trying to get above you, if I can't get above you, no problem. I'll slander you and make you lower than me by my evil words about you, causing others to look badly upon you. And then the next thing is disobedient to parents. It's interesting. Every list in the Bible that talks about when a society gets evil, it always mentions this. Not respecting parents, not being disobedient. Why? Because no society is greater than the family nucleus. You want a strong community, you have strong families. You have a breakdown in the family, you have a messed up community. Right? You go to a poor community, if you really want to fix it, you've got to help men and women stay together with their children. What does Satan do? All I got to do is get the man out of the house. Get all these kids being raised by single parents. That's all I got to do. And I will put them in poverty. They'll be saturated in violence. They'll steal and kill from one another. 80% of guys in prison never had a dad in the house. Yeah, that's been like that forever. So again, it all begins by a strong family, and you look at the liberal progressive agenda, it's that. It's always attacking one way or another, that family unit. That's what it's trying to hurt. And so there's a lack of honoring, but there's also just out and out disobedient, breaking down the family reunion. So notice the next 5 words here: disobedient, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving. Unthankful. Literally, it's ungracious. They're just not a gracious person. Therefore, they're a miserable person, right? When I go to a parking lot and I see somebody trying to take the parking place that I've been waiting for, fine, you can take it. What always gets me is when you go to the gym and everybody's wanting the front parking place. So aren't you getting ready to go in the gym and do 5 miles? What's like 20 more feet? Get in the 3rd row of the parking lot. But either way, grocery store, you go first because, I never have a Karen in my face screaming at me because I just want a world of graciousness and kindness. And here's the heart of a Christian in Ephesians 4:32. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you. This is the same idea here. The word actually forgiving is the root of grace in this particular case. In other words, it's not just being forgiving, but it's being gracious. And in the grace of God that we've received, we're gracing everybody else. And there's kindness and forgiveness and a tenderness there. And the grace brings about a response of gratitude. You're not the grumpy person who didn't get their parking place. And now that guy got in front of me in the line to pay. And that guy got the better seat than I did. And that guy, cut me off on the freeway. And that guy, it's just funny. LA is interesting here. When you put your blinker on the freeway, that tells everybody speed up and make sure you don't get over. When I see somebody with the blinker on, I slow down and let him go. Of course, the people behind me get mad. Why did you let them get in? They should be back there 3 miles waiting in line with the rest of us. It's like, you know what? I'm not walking around upset about it and forget about it 3 minutes later. Now, if I got in a fight with that guy, I'd still be thinking about it in the future. But let him in, totally forgot about it. And then unholy. This is exactly what you think. Not just a very wicked person, not desiring to be unique as God is unique. Verse 3, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good. This word unloving is literally without a natural love. In other words, the love of a parent towards a child or a child toward the parents. In the Greek, there's 4 words for love. There's agape, that's in the Bible. There's philo that we've been using a lot here today, which is like a friendship. There's emotion with that. Then there's eros, which is a sexual love, not in the Bible. And then there's a word that's only used here, the word storge, which is a love towards somebody who's a natural love. It's something that would automatically happen, right? A mother looks at her baby and naturally loves her baby, right? This is what we're talking about. But here, it doesn't have the word storge. It has the word a in front of it. Anytime there's the a in front of it, it means the opposite. So it's a storge is the word here, without natural affection. What did Jesus say in the last days? Matthew 24:12. And because lawlessness, Matthew 24:12, because lawlessness will abound, what's going to happen, guys? The love of many will grow cold. He explains it in Mark 13:12. Brother will betray brother to death. Father, his own children will raise up against their own parents and cause them even to be put to death. The next word here is unforgiving, which is without a treaty. So they're never, ever going to open their heart to that person again, no matter what. Boy, did we see that today. This week again, somebody told me about how their kids completely cut them off. And they won't let them see their grandkids. Did you see all those people on social media that my parents voted for Trump, I'll never talk to them again? There's a bunch of them like that. But they're dug in. You will never see me again. You will never see your grandkids. This is an epidemic in America, and it's talked about. You can put it into YouTube. You'll see psychologists talking about it. It's a unique thing where people dig in and say, I will never talk to my family, my brother, my sister, my whatever it is, ever again. This is the word. Just abandon the family and dig in. I will never forgive them, no matter what. The next one is slanderers. The word here in the Greek is diabolos, the devil. 90% of the time, the word diabolos, it's translated slanderers here because it's in the plural, but it's the word devil. This is the word devil, where the accuser of the brethren, the devil, is the slanderer of the brethren. And this is somebody, again, that is gossiping. Some of the translations have it that way. They translate it instead of slanderers, gossips. Proverbs 28 says these gossips, these troublemakers, false speakers, talebearers, they plant seeds of strife. Gossip separates the best of friends. And then the next one's without self-control. They literally don't want to have self-control. It's not that they don't have it if they want it. They don't want it. They want to do whatever feels good. They want to do it. You see that in Eugene, Oregon, many years back. They passed the you can be naked anywhere in Eugene, Oregon. You guys see that? And again, people move there from time to time. And a couple of weeks ago, there was some 65-year-old guy completely naked. Of course, he had his water bottle tied around his waist, right here. And he just decides to stop by the school and watch the kids play. And of course, a parent comes out, tells him to get away. The police show up going, no, it's totally legal here in Eugene. Well, it reminds me of that. You know, they do not want moral boundaries, literally. Without self-control, they don't want moral boundaries. Any moral boundary. And without self-control, the understanding here is there is no shame for what they do. They have no shame in their ways. I think of the Hugh Hefner, you know. He had no shame. He was proud of what he did. People loved what he did. Even though he had 5 girls a bed a night for the last 30 years of his life, he had no shame. The next is brutal. It's the word not tamed. A savage. Somebody who is savagely hurting another person. This is the days of Noah. In Genesis 6:5, listen to this. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was what? Only evil continually. Genesis 6, verse 11 and 12. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt. All flesh had corrupted their own way on the earth. So like Noah, that guy, he lived 600 years. How many of you guys, you're like going, I'm 80 years old. Well, but the average life expectancy is 600 years. Can you guys do this another 520 years? Noah's my hero, man. Noah's my hero. You know, 600 years worth Monday mornings. You know, 600 years of living in a society like this. And he was the only right person. Everybody was wrong but him. And then he was the next is despisers of good, literally not lovers of good. Isaiah prophesied this. Isaiah 5:20, woe to those who call evil good and what? Good evil. Who put darkness for light and what? Light for darkness. Who put bitter for sweet and what? Sweet for bitter. This is what they're confused. Good is evil. Evil is good. It's evil if you think a 12-year-old kid can't take testosterone to become a boy. The little girl can become a boy. You're evil. You're evil. You're going to try to outlaw my little 11-year-old wanting to be a boy or be a girl, the opposite of what they are. You're the evil one. This is what we are in. We are in these days right now where bad is good and good is bad and evil is good. And in Romans 1, it talks about the wrath of God against such a generation. And he goes on to say, this generation is going to become so evil. I'm going to tell you how evil they become. They hit the lowest rung on the ladder. Romans 1 says the society can't go any lower. This is the final straw that breaks the dam wide open. And it just begins to gush. Society falls apart. What is that final rung? Where men desire men sexually and women desire women sexually. And God throws up his hands and says, I will no longer be a wall. Do whatever you're going to do. Are we in that society, guys? It's not just a country. It's not like one city in Europe is like this. This is the mindset of the world. Ending that, he says, that society on the final rung, what's it going to look like? He says in Romans 1, 28 to 32, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to the base mind, to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all what? Unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy and murder and strife and deceit and evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things. Well, that's what we're seeing. Well, I never thought I would be seeing gender fluid as a thing. I never even considered that. It's like evil things they're inventing. And then what's the next one? Disobedient to parents. Right after whisperers and murderers and violent and proud. And let me tell you something even worse than murderers and proud and blasphemers. People that are disobedient to their parents. Undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, God's Spirit is convicting every human being of sin, of righteousness, of judgment, even though God's Spirit is screaming at them that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but approve, one translation says, encourages those who practice them. Literally, it's not that, oh, I'm a transgendered person. They have in them they can't stop but to try to get others to join them in their transgender world. That's exactly what's happening, isn't it? It's not enough I'm a homosexual. I need you to consider whether you might be one too. And then finishing up here quickly in verse 4, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Traitors, they're not loyal. They're not loyal to their employer. They're not loyal to their country. They're not loyal to their spouse. They're not loyal to their friend. Just like Judas, this is the same word. He was a betrayer of Christ, the same word. Next is headstrong or rash. Literally, this word, headstrong, is two words that says fall forwards, fall forwards. It's like a bull, in my mind, putting its head down, just running at what it saw. I see red, put my head down, I can't see it anymore, but I'm going to destroy what's ever in the way. This impulsive, rash person running at it. Haughty. This is the word literally to raise smoke. They see the world in such a way that they are elite. They're the greatest. Do you see that with these people on YouTube and stuff? It's like they're in the middle of the mall where you're trying to enjoy yourself, and they got their camera doing this dance, and it's like everybody else is unimportant. Get out of my shot. I'm, in the middle of the freeway making my YouTube or whatever it is. It's called YouTube. It's not called OtherTube or TheyTube. It's you, me. It's MeTube. And then the lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. The final 18th one sort of sums it up. It literally says this: they do not love God. It literally says this: they love hedonism. It can be translated that way. They love hedonistic pleasures. It is not about, it's the opposite of loving God. It's loving the world. It's loving their flesh. It's not loving purity. It's loving hedonism. And in verse 5, having a form of godliness, denying its power. Verse 5. Having a form of godliness, but denying its power, from such people turn away. They still go to church on Sundays, guys. Oh, well, such a society, man, they're living out in the woods, No, they look just like your neighbors do now. They get in their car Sunday morning and go to church. And they get to church and they have their form. Did you see last week there was a lady, she was a clear lesbian, she said she was. I can't remember if she's from the Presbyterian Church, United Methodist Church, the Episcopal Church, there are a whole bunch of them now that have homosexual. But she basically was saying with tears, conservative Christians is not the Christianity of the Bible. The word conservative Christian is the same as saying an evil person. Jesus is love. And he would open his arms to all the transgendered people and all the Christian college I went to. They're in a big thing the last few years because they have a LGBTQ on campus and it's growing. And they wanted to have a conservative speaker come in and speak about his life of leaving homosexuality. And the club shut them down on a Christian campus. But yet they have their speakers on that come on campus, encouraging people to be homosexuals. And at this Christian college we went to, that is perfectly okay to do. And anyway, they go to church, they look religious. Jesus said in Matthew 15, 7-9, hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy about you, saying, these people draw near to me with their mouth, honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain emptiness do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. There's a form, the word form here is metamorphosis. They outwardly metamorphosize, and so they don't look like the kind of people that are practicing such weaknesses. So on Sunday when you get together, you have no idea how hedonistic their life is from what you see when they're in their religious form. Again, I think this is so important for us to stop and realize we are in these last days. We should be encouraged going, God didn't leave us in the dark. We should be encouraged by going, God gave us almost more information than we want to comfort us when we're living in such a generation. But then when we get to chapter 4, he's going to tell us the answer is share Jesus. Share Jesus with people. You'll be amazed how many hearts are open to Christ. You'll be amazed how many people would say, tell me more. Explain to me. Who are you? What are you doing? What kind of Christian? Where do you go to church? Do you have a Bible I could have? You'd be amazed. Just one by one, share the Lord, disciple. That's the answer. It's always been the answer. Always will be the answer. Well, Lord, thank you for your word today. And we're sort of dumbfounded how long it takes us to go through 5 verses on a list of horrible topics. But yet, you told us to know these things, to not generally know them or passively know them or have an idea about them, but to thoroughly know them. And then you give us 18 different phrases. Exhausting. Truly exhausting to go through 18 different phrases to describe it so we are not unaware of the whole A to Z picture of a world that's going to grow worse and worse, and that it's all in your control, all in your power. You saw it a gazillion years ago. You saw it in time past 1 billion years ago that this season would be coming upon the rapture of the church, that you're going to rapture us out like Lot was taken out of wicked Sodom and Gomorrah, like Noah was taken out of wicked planet Earth. So we are going to be snatched, those who are alive and remain, we snatched into glory in our new bodies with you out of a world ready to be destroyed in the tribulation period under the power of the Antichrist.